OMDs, yes, oral myofunctional disorders. So oral myofunctional disorders is like any sort of use or misuse of the oral facial muscles. And a lot of times that's going to affect the way that you're breathing. The way that you're breathing is going to make an impact on your overall body and health system, but primarily your sleep. And sleep is actually where our children get a lot of their restorative functions.
What is the thing or things that you've had to quit in order to become successful?
I certainly had to quit
thinking it was too
the
big.
person that I was to get here.
being afraid that I was going to make mistakes. I quickly learned that the road to success is paved with failure.
Would you rather be an incredible cartoonist or an amazing portrait artist?
Well, an incredible cartoonist. I think there's something more whimsical to like cartoons than there is to portraits.
Yeah. Would you rather not know what you're doing tomorrow for 10 years or know exactly what you're doing every day for the next 10 years? Would you rather know what you're doing tomorrow for 10 years or know exactly what you're doing every day for the next 10 years?
I would rather know what I'm doing every day for the next 10 years because at least then I feel like I'm guaranteed another 10 years.
Yeah, it's a good way to see it. Would you rather be known for your good taste in movies or your good taste in art?
Ooh, good taste in movies. I'm more of a movie person than an art person anyway.
All right, same here. Welcome, guys, to another episode of Successful Quitters. My name is Sara Nunez Bee, and I will be your host. Here, we explore the things individuals have had to quit in order to become successful in their arena. And today, we have a very special guest. She is an author, a speaker, a dental airway educator, and a myofunctional therapist. Welcome, Karese Laguerre.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
You're very welcome. Likewise, so happy to have you here. Karese, let's go back to your beginnings. What was Karese like and where were you situated at 5 years old?
Years old, I was in Plainfield, New Jersey. It was a very up and coming, I want to say like lower middle class town or working class town. And what was I doing? I was probably somewhere dreaming about becoming president. I remember at 5, I was very, very interested in what was going on with the presidential race, when Bill Clinton actually became president. And so I was probably somewhere dreaming about when it was going to be my turn to be president.
Wow, that's amazing. Isn't it beautiful how that age allows you to aspire to so many things? And if you have enough support, you might make it all the way to where your dreams are leading you to. And did you have siblings at that age?
Yes, I have 2 siblings, an older brother, he's my half brother, and my younger brother, who would, when I was 5, was 1 years old.
Mm. Oh, so you were an older sister too.
Yes.
Who was your hero?
Hero has always been my dad. He's just like so wonderful. He's everything to everybody and still was able to be everything to us at home. I had a very wonderful childhood. He was always adventurous and liked to go do stuff. And so we would travel and we'd have fun all the time. It was just, he's just a phenomenal person. He's that person you would call when you need something and you know he'll be there.
Hmm. Was your mom this adventurous, or was she more relaxed?
She is super relaxed, anti-adventure. He's like, "You guys have fun. I'll be here." Yeah.
Did you travel on these adventures? Was it outside of the state, or was it, was it every weekend? Was it often that you guys went places?
It was very often. What's interesting is that my parents would tell me stories that when I was younger, we'd do a significant amount of travel because Pan Am.
That's amazing. So, what was high school like? Were you a very friendly kid? Did you keep to yourself?
In high school, I was equally as introverted as I am right now. I was never the one to like go up and approach others to become friends. I might sit at a table by myself, and if somebody came and sat next to me and would like ask me, "Who are you? Like, what's your name?" Then those would be the people that would be my friends. And so it was very good to the people who were my friends, but it was a very small circle of people.
Hmm. And did you have a plan for after high school? Did you have set up what you wanted to be?
I did have a plan for after high school. That plan got a little bit altered. But I did have a plan for after high school. I was going to go to college and have a double major. I was going to major in entrepreneurship
Mm,
and in dance. So I was going to become like
wow.
a choreographer who was like, I don't know, running a business of some sort.
Was dancing a thing when you were younger? Did you
Yes, but
love that?
unofficially. So I did love to dance and I did do a lot of dancing, but I never did any like formal education in dancing. So like street dance and like that kind of stuff. Really excited about that kind of dancing. But yes.
Yeah, so you wanted to major in that. And what made you change? What happened then?
Ooh, well, 2 or 3 months prior to me getting ready, like in the midst of packing my stuff up, getting ready for college, I found out I was pregnant with my son. And so that kind of
Oh,
turned everything into a different direction. But
okay.
everything works out for the best.
For sure, for sure. And what did you do at that point?
So at that point, it was a changeover. So instead of me going away for college, which I was so excited about and very disappointed when I could no longer go away, they told me I couldn't, give birth on campus. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have to stay home. So I stayed home with my family and just did like a community college. I commuted back and forth every day.
What is it like? And this is important that we bring up because I bet a lot of girls are in your situation or will be in your situation once finishing high school.
Mhm.
What was it like to be a teenager and to be transitioning from one phase of your life to the next and finding out that you were pregnant? Because you said that you were close to your dad, so I'm assuming that they were somewhat understanding. um but what is it like to know that you have to deal with that?
Now, I don't, their understanding, it was very, there's a very fine line to that understanding. They were still very upset as parents, and almost devastated for whatever dreams or, ideations they had in their own mind of what I would become too. But still very supportive. And, we were still very close knit as a family. For me, it was a little scary. It was very scary, actually. It was trying to figure out all over again. You spend so much time in high school trying to figure out what you're going to do, who you're going to be, what college you're going to go to. Does so and so like you back? Like you have all of these problems when you're in high school, and then it turns into different problems when you have such a major change. Like now you're going to be a parent for the first time. And for me, I was going to be like a single parent. It's quite interesting to have to kind of mull through all of those things. But I think the importance of having a support system actually is what's really going to help get through all of that as you're making those decisions, making them. I made more of those decisions less independently and more as a collective. So who could help me as I am doing community college, who's going to watch the baby, who's going to, support me as we are
That's
making these next
crazy.
steps.
It's like
Yeah.
reality hits you so hard when something like that happens, and it's common. So it's a thing that we don't talk very much about, but it's something that happens. And having a child is always a blessing, and with that blessing has comes huge responsibilities.
Of
If you
course.
had to say something to your younger self the day that you found out and you're transitioning from high school to college, you're pregnant, what would you say?
I would say that don't stress. Everything is going to work out for the best. You're not going to see the bigger picture right now, but going forward, I promise you, you're going to be okay. So don't stress too much. It's not good for the baby.
Hmm. Most definitely. And so that changed a little bit, and you started going to college, even having the baby.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was able to, take some steps in a different direction. I think I changed my major from entrepreneurship to, just like business marketing or something like that. And so it was very, very different, but also along the same lines.
I'm curious, if you said that you most of the time kept to yourself, or you would wait for people to speak to you and all that good stuff, what was about entrepreneurship that was appealing to you?
I think just the idea of it, the fact that I wouldn't have necessarily a boss, that I could be my own boss. And so I wouldn't have to really interact too much with coworkers and so forth. I don't think, 17 or 18-year-old me really thought it out too much farther to the fact that I would have to maybe network and like really talk to people significantly more than I would if I had a regular job. So entrepreneurship was very exciting for me because I thought that, I wouldn't have to deal with people, but the exact opposite is true.
Yeah. And at that time, you're in college and you're choosing a major. Was having a baby a bit of a push to keep going through college?
It was and it wasn't. I had a couple of pauses where I wanted to do something that made me feel good. And business marketing wound up not necessarily being the thing. So I took a pause, I took a break, and then I started back up and I did hospitality and hospitality management as a major. And then I found that that wasn't really what was speaking to me. And then I went into dental hygiene, and then that wound up being the one that got me through the finish line. But it was a lot of education and some other things that just didn't quite speak to my soul before I
And
got to.
and just so that some people can maybe find their way, how was it that you go from hospitality to dental hygiene? What was it that made that change happen?
So I mentioned earlier that I did a lot of travel with my family. And in all of that travel, I really loved being in hotels. I loved airports. Like, I really love the weird hospitality things that most people really don't enjoy. Like, they prefer being at home or avoiding airports. But that's the stuff that I really loved. I don't think as I started to learn more about it that it really was something I wanted to like spend every day in. I think I enjoy airports because I get to get on a plane and fly away. It's not like I don't want to be at the airport all day, every day. But I did really always have a unique affinity for teeth. And it's something that's always been interesting to me. And I don't know, I just followed my little interest in teeth and it worked out.
That's amazing. How long? So you started as a dental hygienist,
Yes.
and how long is the course for, or the career for?
So dental hygiene has 2 years focused in school. There are prerequisites always, so it's very similar to a nursing path. So if you want to become a nurse, there's some prereqs, and then you do like intensive nursing training. So there are some prerequisites, and then you apply for the dental hygiene program, and it's 2 years intensive in order to be eligible for your boards and so forth.
With the prerequisites, is this an AA or equivalent to an AA?
Yes. So in most states, it's an AA. In a couple of states, there are some universities that will do a bachelor's degree for it. But for most states, it is an associate's degree.
Wonderful. And you become a dental hygienist. And then how do we get to this place? You got married. Did you get married?
I did. I did.
You had more
Yes.
children.
Yes, I did. And so now there's a total of four, and actually everything kind of all collides. I, as a mother of four and start working as a dental hygienist, I'm working with a pediatric dentist. And so I'm working with kids all the time. And I like to say that as parents, we always have the highlight reel that we give when people ask, how's everything? And so when I was talking about my kids, like this one's in dance or that one is doing soccer and everything's great. But, like many families, everything's not always great. We had a lot of different things going on, whether it was my son and he had a lot of behavioral impulse, focus issues, very typical ADHD, stuff. My daughters had sleep issues and like upper respiratory issues with chronic strep throat, ear infections, ear infections, congestion, like all the time, upper respiratory, something or the other. And it really was in working with that pediatric dentist. So I'm working in that office as a hygienist, that doctor really put into perspective for me a lot of what was going on with my children really all stemmed from the same thing. It's the way that they were using their oral facial muscles. So the way that they were breathing, the way how their tongue was resting, like everything mattered for how they were sleeping, how they were breathing, how they were able to really grow and develop as people. And so once I started to discover all that and start to see the changes in the children as, I got more and more educated, it drove me just fully passionate into myofunctional therapy and what I do today.
Did you, as a parent, because I see this a lot, when you're frustrated because you have so much going on, especially if you don't have one, but you have two, three, four, five, um, you don't even think there are resources that might be able to help you with these things, right? And the last thing I ever hear is anything that has to do with teeth having a correlation with behavior, sleep, and all that good stuff. That's why when I heard about what you do, I thought it was so powerful to share, because a lot of parents don't know that this is a thing. And a pediatrician sometimes won't refer you to someone that will give you answers like the ones that you could give us to guide. But were you frustrated at that point where you're dealing with so many things from your children?
Absolutely. I was very frustrated, and there's a lot of times where you're going to seek help from your pediatrician or your primary care physician, and you're asking questions and you kind of dismissed, or there's times where, they're like, oh, they'll grow out of it, and they just kind of send you along. It was a lot of frustration. I think in discovering it, it took me time too to really even understand. So even as a professional in the field, I was like, I don't understand how these things are associated. Like, I just don't get it. But once you really start to understand that the body works as an entire system, like everything works together, it really begins to click in. And I think we are so cultured as a society to really put medical, dental, like separate these things as if it's not attached to the same person, and that these two things don't influence each other, because they definitely do.
So bad behavior could be correlated then to which is called, what is the OMDs?
OMDs, yes, oral myofunctional disorders. So oral myofunctional disorders is like any sort of use or misuse of the oral facial muscles. And a lot of times that's going to affect the way that you're breathing. The way that you're breathing is going to make an impact on your overall body and health system, but primarily your sleep. And sleep is actually where our children get a lot of their restorative functions, a lot of their cognitive abilities. When they are not sleeping well, they tend to be more hyperactive during the day. They lose a little bit of their impulse control. They lose a lot of that behavioral impulse control as well, too, to where everything is just acceptable as far as they're concerned. They're just so tired. They can't process it in the same way that a tired adult becomes fatigued. A tired child is wired. They are like on fire, hyperactive.
Yeah, I have nephews. I can, after this, I'm totally going back with all this information and saying, hey guys, we need to check this out. Um, when it comes to age, what's the youngest that you've seen go into treatment with something like this? How early can you figure out if they need help or therapy?
So you can do some early intervention from the age of approximately 3 to 5 is a really great age for early intervention. When you're talking about getting like full restorative results, 5 and up is ideal. So anywhere from 5 to 105 is a great age and a great time to do myofunctional therapy. But 3 to 5 is more early intervention because just cognitively, they're not really there developmentally to be able to retain a lot of the results of the therapy. So you could start by making like little steps and little strides, but by the time they hit 5, they're really developmentally ready to retain and, keep the new neuromuscular patterns.
What is myofunctional therapy?
Awesome. Myofunctional therapy is kind of like personal training, but for all the muscles below the eyes, but above the shoulders. So I work in this wonderful region here to help to strengthen, coordinate, and eliminate any dysfunction that's going on in the region. And so a lot of these muscles, nobody thinks about them often, but they're actually more important than the muscles we do think about, like our abs, because these are the muscles that are really primary in our eating, in our speech, in our respiration. I mean, these are critical, vital areas here.
Yeah. And how can a mother, because you go to, like I said, a pediatrician and they'll tell you, you know what, they're healthy, so they're hyper. Or like, it's a boy, so you'll see him do all kinds of things because it's a boy. He looks healthy. So, what are the things that a mother can look at to see to determine whether she should request some sort of a test for this?
So, when you're looking at your child, it's a really good time to observe them is actually when they're sleeping. So, you'll notice that there are a lot of things that might go on during their sleep if you ever get able to watch them in the middle of the night. So, let them go down to bed and then, maybe 1 a.m., I don't know, pop into the room and just stand there for 5 minutes. Is there snoring? Are they grinding? Are they tossing and turning? Do you have bedwetting happening beyond the age of 5 or 6? Under that, it's a couple of reasons why it might happen, but beyond the age of 5 or 6, you really shouldn't have that happen. The bladder should be turning itself off at night. When it's not, that's a red flag. So, are they sleepwalking? Are you hearing any sort of sleep talking? Is restless sleep happening? Night terrors? Those types of things. So, if you're observing any of those in combination with daytime inappropriate behavior, lack of focus, like typical ADHD symptoms, just know that there is a 70% correlation between children who have poor sleep and how that manifests, and children who have ADHD and how that manifests. So everything that might appear as if it's like an ADHD might not be. There's a 70% chance that the child just needs improved sleep in order to be better, as opposed to the alternative with ADHD, which we know is nothing other than medication.
So, if we see a child that's snoring, that would be one of the red flags. All the things that you've said, but snoring, which is something that we say, oh, okay, he's tired. He's tired every night, he's just tired. That's why they're snoring. So, that might be a red flag that we're not looking at, we're not paying
It's a
attention to.
huge red flag. When you think about snoring, and I think a lot of people think like, oh, it's cute, like they snore just like their dad or something like that. It's not cute. What the sound of snoring really is, it's the sound of air meeting resistance. So as they're trying to breathe at night, that air is meeting resistance and it's having to push through narrow passages because all the tissue is almost closed up in the upper respiratory tract. So when you think about it like that, it's hard to look at it as cute because you're like, I can hear my child struggling to breathe. And that's not something that you want to hear. And when they're not breathing well, they don't cycle through their sleep stages appropriately. And human growth hormone is only secreted during stage 3 of sleep. And so if they're not cycling through, they're going to have problems because they're not going to be able to adequately get the hormonal and the cognitive benefits that happen during sleep.
What is the testing like when it comes? What's the difference between the testing for children and the testing for adults? Is there a difference?
When it comes to sleep, there's not much of a difference. We're looking at the same metrics. Honestly, we're looking at their respiration, their oxygenation, how much oxygen they're getting as they are sleeping. We're looking at the snoring. We're looking at, their stages of sleep and how that fluctuates over the period of time at night. And it's a very similar testing mechanism. So whether you're doing a home sleep test or you're doing a lab sleep test, it's very similar between adults and children.
If you see these behavioral issues and snoring and all these things, what should be requested to the pediatrician? What is a proper way to request this
That's
test
a
or
great
help?
question. I love that. That is a fantastic question. The best way to start to ask for it is to actually have a little bit of proof or evidence with you. So if you can record, if your child is snoring, you can record that. If you can record any sort of movement, if you're experiencing any sort of sleepwalking, if you're recording, just get like a 10-second clip of whatever, and you play that for the pediatrician and you express your concern. That is the very first step to them either sending you one of two ways. Sometimes they'll send you to an ENT or an ear, nose, throat doctor. The ENT will evaluate to see if there's any sort of structural or physiological blocks that are causing what's ever happening with the nose or the throat that's causing that snoring and so forth to happen. Or they'll send you straight to a sleep physician. When you get to the sleep physician, most likely you'll do a sleep test or a sleep study, and then from there you'll know and understand what's going on. So they'll send you one of those two paths. As a myofunctional therapist, I wind up working with both ends of there, where I work with the sleep physicians and the ENTs for natural resolution of these issues. So to help the child sleep better and to work on the function after we've addressed that, yes, there is a problem.
What is therapy like?
Therapy is really, really engaging. I think that is my number one goal for it. It is a commitment. So I compare it to personal training because just like any other muscles in the body, if you wanted 6-pack abs, you know that there's dedication and a timeline to that. That's not happening overnight. That's something where, there's like months of commitment to get to. Same thing with our oral facial muscles. It takes months to really commit to getting the results. And so I try to keep it as engaging as possible. We do exercises. These exercises eventually turn into activities where we start coordinating muscle function, and then we integrate it into daily life, which makes it more of a, new learned skill that is subconscious. So it's fun. It can be engaging. I don't want to make it out to be like it's not work, because it is work, but I try to make it as fun and as engaging as possible for everyone I work with.
And are you able to do this remotely?
Yes. So I think one of the there were very few blessings of 2020 is that we all kind of learned how to work in a telehealth environment and work distance wise. Everybody's a little bit more accustomed with Zoom. So yes, we do this virtually, and it is equally as successful. I've got a lot of great success stories, both in person and virtually.
That's wonderful. That's great. That is a gift from the pandemic.
Yeah.
Are there things or tips that you could give parents to where maybe they can ease into the process of going into toddler area that might help their children breathe better, that might, because they won't all need it, but maybe there are some that will need this kind of therapy. But is there a way that we can get children used to breathing the right way, or games that they can play at an early age that will ease the way into this kind of therapy or life in general?
Absolutely. There's a lot of great things you can do. I think the primary thing you should focus on should always be a nasal hygiene routine. Kids are never too young to start a nasal hygiene routine when they're babies. We're taking the little squeegee thing and we're sucking all the stuff out of their nose. When they get older, you could use a saline rinse or a saline spray. You can clean out their nose. That is like the number one thing that not enough people are doing that they need to do. And so having a nasal hygiene routine is incredibly helpful in your
How,
overall goals.
how often would you, let's say it's a 2 year old or 3 year old, a toddler, right? How
Yeah.
often do you do the nasal hygiene you would suggest?
Twice a day, ideally. Here are the
Hmm.
two times. And if you can only do it once a day, then I need you to do it before bed. But twice a day, ideally when they get up first thing in the morning, and then secondarily would be before they go to bed. So you're kind of on both ends of that daytime schedule at the very beginning and at the very end of the day to keep the nose as clear as possible.
Does nasal hygiene help with avoiding the impact of all these crazy daycare viruses?
So much so there's a lot of respiratory viruses that go around, particularly with children. You see them always with the runny noses all the time. When you're using a really good saline spray or rinse and you're keeping those passages clean, you're also helping to promote the natural flora of the nose. And so you make yourself just a little more resistant, I'm sorry, to getting some of those infections. So I really learned a lot of this when I had my youngest, and she was probably the least sick. Not that she didn't get sick, she did, but she was less sick than all of her peers who were, they're all sharing germs all together. And
Yeah.
it's really, really impactful for helping them build up their immune system.
That's wonderful because I think that's a big concern for parents. Every other day there's a new virus. Like you said, they're sharing all of this together. Is there anything else that we can give them as tips? This is great. This is a great nasal hygiene, definitely a must. Is there anything else that we could suggest?
Absolutely. So as you are, playing with your child or having fun, engaging, playful times with your child, having them mimic you while you're doing certain things. So, testing their range of motion for their tongue. Like you can have them eat like a frog. I think eating like a frog is super fun. You get your tongue out and you have them like aim for things around different areas of their mouth. And that's a really great way to get, that tongue range of motion and to see really what are their capabilities. Sometimes you'll learn a lot there too. You'll say, oh wow, my child can't do such and such, and so these are things you need to work on with them. And or just engaging with the lips. Sometimes you can just do fun playful things like make popping sounds or noises, or like try to make your face look like a fish. All of these are really working these muscles that oftentimes really don't get really worked that often at all.
Yeah, when it comes to sleep, does it make a difference when they're younger, whether you lay them down on their back, on their side, on their tummy?
They say that, the back to sleep is really the best way for them to breathe. I think for me personally, they need that belly to the ground. And so me personally, so not professionally, but me personally, think that belly sleeping is really the best way for a lot of the younger kids to get a little bit more grounded.
Yeah. What would be the diagnose that they would need? What would be the diagnose needed in order to go to a therapist like yourself?
So there's a lot of different things that might lead you to a myofunctional therapist. So whether it's sleep disordered breathing, and that's an umbrella of things like obstructive sleep apnea, or anything as mild as like snoring or grinding. If you're having issues with the jaw, if the child is having difficulty finding where their ability to meet the teeth are. Sometimes people are constantly readjusting the jaw and they see the jaw
Mhm.
shifting all the time. that's a really great sign that you probably need some work on the muscles that are holding that jaw, because you can't figure out where it is the teeth are supposed to rest. And anybody who's struggling with habits like thumb sucking or pacifier you can't get rid of past a certain age, those are big, big red flags.
Is it good to give your children pacifiers?
Up to a certain point. If you get rid of them by age 5 or 6 months, that's totally acceptable. They need it. They need that sucking ability. But beyond that, they don't need it. They wind up just getting attached to the thing and don't really develop their proper oral function.
Yeah. It's crazy how much of an interaction oral things have to do with everything else. How does this affect, how are OMDs affecting older people, regular adults?
So it compounds as you age. So if you're having issues when you're young, they just get more and more increasingly difficult when you're older. So if you're having if you're just experiencing snoring and it's not an officially diagnosed obstructive sleep apnea when you're young, when you're older, that might turn into moderate or severe obstructive sleep apnea, which then has a lot of risks of cardiac or neurological events that could happen while you are sleeping. We see all the time that, in certain populations where we have like obesity or we have any sort of issues already where you're prone to cardiac events, that this is more prevalent. If you are having any issues with oral facial pain, or if you're getting morning headaches, if you're getting the TMJ pain, if you're getting TMJ lockjaw, that is a big thing that happens as you go with unaddressed issues like moving that jaw around when you're younger, or inability to really stabilize the jaw when you're younger. So it just compounds, it gets worse. All of the things that the children are struggling with, as you leave it untreated, it winds up becoming worse as an adult.
Yeah. Does the insurance cover this?
Great
No
question.
insurance
I
cover this?
really wish insurance was more, forward thinking. Currently, no. But if you look to where we were like 15 years ago, like chiropractic, lactation, like that kind of stuff was not covered by insurance. And so I think that if we look toward the future, I think we will get there with myofunctional therapy. We're just not there now.
That's bad. Is there medicine included into this therapy?
No. So it's actually really more of a natural way of dealing with the bad habits that are the impact, that create that impact on what's going on in the oral facial complex. So no, it's more of just changing your habits and your function by way of, repetition and metacognition and that type of thing.
So basically, like you said, this is like a gym for this part of the body, which is amazing because strengthening is what gives you the ability to go back to the way it's supposed to be at, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So once you get that strength and that awareness, it's significantly easier to now have that as a new lifetime habit.
Karese, what is a case that you might be able to share with us that maybe surprised you from this kind of therapy working, a miracle basically, or making such a good impact in someone's life?
I think there's a lot of cases that I'm always surprised every day, because I like to say that myofunctional therapy, I have one goal. I'm really looking for oral function. Everything else that happens is a happy accident. And there's a lot of happy accidents that we wind up getting with myofunctional therapy. But I'll say that there are some cases, like a couple that stick out to me. There's this one with a 14-year-old girl who came to me. She had a crooked smile, and very, very much they her parents struggled. They went to everybody, absolutely everybody they could. They went to a neurologist. They had MRIs. She had CAT scans. She had all sorts of testing done. She worked with a physical therapist. She had worked with an occupational therapist. She had did so much work, and nothing changed that smile at all. In her dental office, they referred her to myofunctional therapy, and she came across to me, and she was at that point exhausted. She'd spent most of her life being poked and prodded, like tested and trying to figure out what was going on. But there was so much oral dysfunction that it was really that we wound up being able to help her really be more confident. So when I met her, she was a very shy, quiet 14-year-old who would cover her mouth when she's talking, like she did not want people to see and know. And by the time we finished, and it was a 2-year case, like we worked for a long time to undo all the oral habits. But at the end of that 2-year case, she was like all about makeup and on social media. And she's like an influencer now and is all about showing everybody her beautiful face, her beautiful smile. And I think that was a really transformative one for me, because it went from really her not being sure of herself to having so much confidence that she's just like crushing it as an influencer.
That's wonderful. Myofunction therapy, how much is it? How much is a session? How long do sessions have to be?
So, on average, it takes people between 6 to 9 months to finish a myofunctional therapy program. And your rates are going to vary based on where you're located. So, if you are in if you're in like, I don't know, California, like LA, it's going to be different than what somebody might pay in the middle of Kansas. But I will say that the rates for a full program vary anywhere from 1,500 to probably somewhere close to $7,000 to finish a full program.
And the programs usually are once a week.
More often than not, you're meeting once or once every 2 weeks. So, roughly, yeah. So, about 30 minutes each session. And then you're doing that for a period of 6 to 9 months.
And once you do the session, the 30 minutes, there's homework to be given to these people, we could call it.
Oh, yes. Because that's the only way that you're going to get the change. It's just like personal training, right? So if you think about going to a gym and you're working out your muscles, and you go home and you sit down for a week and you don't do any exercises, you'll never see any change. Same thing, because the muscles need the daily work. So 2 to 3 times a day, we recommend that they're doing the exercises in between appointments. And then, we change and we modify each appointment to get towards the goal.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges for people that join myofunctional therapy?
Being able to withstand the long commitment, having to go like a 9-month period of time, or even for my 14-year-old case, where 2 years is a long time to commit to twice a day doing exercises.
Yeah. And what is the hardest thing for a myofunctional therapist?
The hardest thing is that a lot of people come to you as like their last resort. So you get and you hold on to, I think a lot of us therapists hold on to a lot of the traumas of these people, like how long they haven't been heard, and, where they've just been struggling for so long, and what it is that will be able to help them. And they're so grateful to have found you, but also there's so much that they're carrying as like a load, a burden with them. And so you carry a piece of that with you too, because you feel very attached and, committed to getting them finally a result. And so that's the hardest part, is like the burden that you carry with your patients.
And how are you able to detach at a certain point? Or how do you deal with that in life? Because you're a therapist, but then you have to go home to your children and your life. And so how are you able to work through all of that?
It's a very good question. I try to keep everything as separate as possible. There are some people who might attach more and have like a lack of boundaries. So they'll give their personal cell number, or, they'll have people reach out to them anytime. I implement boundaries. Like, it is here that it stays.
Great
And
idea.
yeah, it's here that it stays, and I can't bring it with me. And any issues that they're having, if they absolutely positively need me, it can wait till business hours the next day.
Were you able to treat your own children? Were you the one treating them, or did you put them with someone?
No, I did it. And I think it was a combination of things. Like, I really wanted to see how it was working for them, and I wanted to learn and grow more. And so, in working with them, I could take things a little bit farther. I can try doing more exercises and see how that works, doing less exercise. Like, I could just kind of manipulate the program to figure out which way is working best. So, I definitely worked with them, and I thought that was like the best learning experience I could have ever had, because they manifested everything so differently that it was a beautiful process to see the individuality play out.
What would you, how would you describe OMDs? What would be your description of OMDs so that people can understand them a little bit better?
So, oral myofunctional disorders, or OMDs, are any sort of overdevelopment of facial muscles, or facial oral muscles, underdeveloped muscles, compensatory patterns, asymmetries. And so, if you want to understand it, it's if you know that there is a weakness you have on one side, or you feel like your muscles are too tight or tense on one side versus the other, or even if they're too tense both sides bilaterally. That's something that is a clear indication of an OMD, an oral myofunctional disorder.
Hmm. And I wonder because you're saying that, and we see it, right? All of our body is fully connected, and one
Mhm.
thing that's have to do with the other. Does exercising have anything to do with this? Regular exercising, does it have any impact whatsoever?
To a lesser extent, yes. I mean, exercise, diet, a lot of things do play a role and have an impact. If you're exercising, you're more likely to have better gross motor skills, which do help you when you are trying to work. Like, I work in a set area, so I'm looking for more fine motor skills. So, in a way, yes, it does have an impact that can be very positive, as opposed to someone who's probably not exercising very often and may have difficulty with balance, or there's some of their gross motor skills, and then it's going to make my job a little harder working on
Yeah.
those fine skills.
And you brought up a good point, diet. How is diet if you find a toddler that is diagnosed with this? Is their diet going to change? Does their diet have an impact?
Diet impacts a lot. A lot of times with some of the toddlers, they're not doing very much chewing. So we'll find that there's a lot of pouches nowadays. There's a lot of non-functional use of the mouth, where they might be putting things in their mouth and not necessarily chewing on things. So if they're sucking down a pouch and then the next thing they eat is like mac and cheese, and there's very little chewing that's required for mac and cheese. I mean, if they're having a very soft diet and they're not using their jaw at all, or their facial muscles as they're chewing, and they're not really getting good stimulation of that area, it's really unfortunate, and that will lead to more problems in the future for them.
Yeah. And when it comes to the elderly, do you see that there is, because they, sometimes they don't have teeth and different things like that. Is there a change on the diet as well that could benefit them?
Absolutely. So, dietary changes that we highly recommend with adults, but specifically the elderly, is having more whole foods. You find that with your elderly, they have the foods that they like. They don't care what you think about the foods that they like. They're going to eat what they want to eat. But having more whole foods, and like a non-inflammatory diet. So, you're going to cut back on your dairy. You're cutting out probably your gluten and your refined grains. You're making sure that you're not having too much much fatty foods, like you're really cutting back a lot of the good stuff, or what they would call the good stuff. That way you can get better changes that are able to be retained.
So myofunctional therapy serves for the elderly as well then.
Oh, yeah, it's across the whole lifespan, because if it hadn't resolved when they were children, and certainly not for most of their adulthood, it becomes really bad when they're really old.
That's powerful, because it's something that I don't think has a light being that's shining on it, and it's information that definitely needs to get out there for all ages. Very powerful. Karese, what is one thing or things that you've had to quit in order to become successful?
A big thing I had to quit to become successful was I had to let go of perfectionism, or wanting things to be just right before I launched something, or before I implemented something, or before I really put forth a thought or a process into the world. Uh, Everything is never going to be perfect. It's always going to have something that I would have liked to add or tweak. And so it's really important that when you have a good thought, when you have an idea, when you have something, you get it out there and you test. Testing is important. It's okay. It's not a failure. It's a learning process. So I think getting rid of that perfectionism really did benefit.
It's wonderful. Where can our audience find you?
You can find me on Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram. I am at the Myospot, TheMyoSpot, or you can find me on my website, themyospot.com.
And like you said prior, I just want to repeat the fact that you can actually do therapy remotely. And I'm assuming that these sessions are one on one, or do you guys have group therapy as well?
So I do a lot of one-on-one work. Yes, it's really best one-on-one.
Yeah, because it's so suited to one person specifically.
Exactly.
Wonderful. So I appreciate you very much. We're going to put links to things that you have written as well on our YouTube, so that people have access to all of this. You've given us so much information that I think is important to share. So thank you so much for the time and the golden nuggets.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And thank you guys for watching and listening another episode of Successful Quitters. My name is Sara Nunez Bee, and I will see you on the next one.